Hello, and welcome to our Energy Connect studio at NOG Energy Week 2023. I'm delighted to have sitting next to me Dayo Williams, Program Executive at Tetracore Energy. Dayo, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much. How are you doing?
Now, Nigeria remains one of the most energy-poor countries in the world, but what solutions does Tetracore provide to meet the energy demand from industry and households of this growing population?
Okay, thank you very much. First, it's indeed a pleasure to be here to have this conversation. Interesting time at the NOG today. So Tetracore is very well invested in its decarbonization targets. As a company, we're already major and active players in the midstream and downstream energy sector. And we currently distribute natural gas across a range of industries, ranging from manufacturing companies to power holding companies. So for us, we've been able to scale up our distribution up to about 60 million scf of natural gas supply per day. And by so doing, we've been able to ensure that we promote active utilization of natural gas across the entire Nigerian landscape, and also ensure that we're able to decongest and reduce reliance on fossil fuel, and particularly diesel and petrol for energy supplies. For us, one of the key things that we look out for is to respond to three of the major challenges currently facing the sector, being reliability, availability, and sustainability of energy. So what we tend to do is, as a strategy, we look to unlocking natural gas from upstream sources. We develop midstream infrastructures and then channel those supplies downstream to meet offtake and end user demand. So beyond that, we are also indirectly a contributor to scaling up power generation capacity across the country. We, in collaboration with the Niger Delta Power Holding Company, one of the biggest major power generation companies in Nigeria, we are able to supply natural gas to their power plants, and by so doing, we've been able to indirectly contribute to over 300 megawatts of power supply across the country. So as a strategy, what we tend to do is to look at the entire value chain, see how we can promote natural gas distribution across the country as a critical means to solving our energy deficit problems in Nigeria, and then look towards both local and export markets for natural gas consumption.
That's really interesting. And from what I'm gathering is you really see opportunities then in the gas sector.
Of course.
But also I think quite important, you mentioned, the power sector. Do you want to just touch on a bit exporting, so looking outside the Nigerian market as well?
Yeah, of course. So Nigeria is strategically located, right? So there's ample opportunity to develop LNG terminals, that would help us to aid our export contribution to the global market, especially in the wake of the Ukraine-Russian crisis. Africa has become a center and a centerpiece for natural gas distribution across the globe. And interestingly, we have a huge reserve of natural gas in Nigeria, and particularly in Africa. So, and most of them is largely untapped. So there's huge and ample opportunity, develop LNG terminals, supply LNG across the country. So beyond just local consumption, there's also ample opportunity to develop a supply market to meet the current deficit in Europe.
Nigeria is implementing, landmark reforms at the moment in the oil and gas and power sector, the Petroleum Industry Act and the Electricity Industry Act. What do these reforms mean for the country, but also energy companies like yourself?
Okay, great. For one, the Petroleum Industry Act has been one of the major overhauls in the oil and gas sector that has happened in Nigeria currently. Before now, there was a centralization of regulatory powers with the Department of Petroleum Resources, but with the introduction of the Petroleum Industry Act, what we've done is we've decentralized the industry in such a way that we have separate regulatory bodies overseeing upstream, separate regulatory bodies overseeing midstream and downstream infrastructure and development and operations. So what it has done is it has created a quite great investor-centric opportunities. So we have the upstream commission well focused on creating policies and laws that generally just speaks to the peculiarities of the upstream industry. We have the authority, the midstream and downstream authority, creating regulations and policies that speaks directly to the peculiarities of the midstream and downstream sector. So by so doing, we know that we can have well-tailored and specific fit regulations that promote investments in the industry. Beyond that, the fiscal regime of the PIA is interesting. it has created a much needed investor confidence to be able to come into the Nigerian oil and gas industry and the space, invest and promote much more exploration and production. So the fiscal regime, the old structuring and for regulations and all that, we're very confident that the PIA sort of solves the problems that we always envisaged in the industry, right? And then there's the electricity, the New Electricity Act, that also, like the PIA, sorts of decentralizes power generation. So what we now have is the promotion of private investors to be able to come in, invest privately in both generation and distribution, compared to what we had before, where there were extreme franchising of distribution areas, such that the ability to wheel your power once you've generated was really not so clear. But now private investors can come in, invest in both generation and distribution infrastructures, and ensure that they are able to generally scale up power generation across the country. So it's been interesting feedbacks from both the oil and gas sector and the power sector. We're confident that it positions us as investors and as businessmen to be able to now get the much needed financing and all to invest in both sectors.
Very interesting to hear your viewpoint on that, Dayo. And just before we go, we're here at NOG Energy Week. What's the importance of this show for Nigeria's oil and gas, but also energy industry, to have a show like this here?
There's nothing as great as gathering industry experts and people who has contributed actively to the development of both the Nigerian, the African, and the global world industry space. All gathered together, sharing experiences, sharing insights onto what we think we can do, particularly as a continent, to develop our energy space. There's one reality, is that Nigeria is still heavily backward in terms of our generation and our energy capacity. Right, there's much that needs to be done. I always say that for Nigeria particularly, we are a natural gas hub. In fact, we have natural gas in excess of 200 TCF proven gas reserves. So in the wake of the recent trends and the energy shift to cleaner sources of energy as opposed to fossil fuels, the NOG presents an opportunity for Africa to present our case as it is. You know, understandably that as a continent, and particularly Nigeria, we need to look at developing our natural gas resources to meet the current shift in the energy trend. So it is an interesting place to not only present our case, but to also present a case for investment in the natural gas and energy space in Africa.
Well, Dayo, that's really good to hear. And I appreciate you coming down to give me your insights and views.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's good to be here. For us as Tetracore, we are openly and generally looking to scale up investments in energy in Nigeria. Like I already said, we're already actively in the midstream and downstream space. We're currently looking to go upstream to also be able to unlock our own natural gas and develop much more LNG terminals and facilities to be able to ensure that we can generally meet our local demand and also export out of Nigeria.
Well, that's great to hear. Thanks a lot.
Very much.
Thanks everyone for watching, and I look forward to bringing you more studio interviews in the coming days.